And we are live. Okay, welcome back to Fat Free Economics. My channel is about unwinding the clickbait headlines that you see in the economic news, in the financial news, and help you get better clarity about what's really happening with the economy. And today we are going to talk about something that has been rather big in the news. And so let me bring that up on screen. And as you're no doubt aware, if you're watching this video, if you clicked on this, you already know that Supreme Court has ended the eviction moratorium, right? And this is a pretty big uh, event in terms of its impact on the economy. And there's going to be a lot of work to tease out exactly what this means for economic growth, job creation, so on and so forth. So it's probably going to take more than one broadcast to do this. And in this live stream, what I want to do is run through the numbers and have a reasonable estimate of exactly how many people are at risk. Because first, we need to define the problem. So we're going to look at this question, right? And basically, the question that we're asking is how many people really are at risk of losing their home because of this, the end of the moratorium. We're going to run through the numbers, right? As we always do, we're going to crunch the data, and then I will give you my concluding thoughts on what that means for the rest of the economy. And like I said, I will do follow-up videos on this to really assess the whole impact of this. But anyways, so let's get into the headlines, right? So, um, as we know, this is a snippet. Well, okay, so sorry. This is a snippet from an article in the New York Times. And reading quickly through the text, it says the decision puts hundreds of thousands of tenants at risk of losing shelter. This hundreds of thousands is pretty optimistic, actually. While the administration struggles to speed the flow of billions of dollars in federal funding to people who are behind in rent because of the coronavirus pandemic and its associated economic hardship. And to make it worse, it also says only about 5.1 billion of the 46.5 billion in aid have been dispersed by the end of July, according to figures released on Wednesday, as bureaucratic delays at the state and local levels snarled the payout. So I'm not an expert on the legal aspect of this and all the bureaucratic snafus that have come out, but my uh, uh, my sense of what's happening here is that this has been done very swiftly. Government action usually takes a lot longer, right? This was swift action taken under the urgency of the pandemic. And I myself work for government, and I know how long it takes for new rules and regulations to be debated and refined and debated and so on and so forth. And actually, it takes years. So what's happening is that a lot of the state and local authorities are having many, many questions about how to actually execute on this moratorium. I think one of the biggest questions that has come up about is the question of fraud and saying, to what extent do we verify the information from these renters and to assess the veracity of their information, right? And before we grant any kind of rental relief. So that's certainly an understandable concern. So because of considerations of that nature, unfortunately, very little of the renters' assistance have been distributed to the people in need. And believe me, it is actually a better idea for us to help people when they are, you know, in need of this kind of assistance. And I'm speaking from as an economist because, it's generally less costly to taxpayers as a whole, to the economy as a whole, for us to provide some assistance to people rather than letting them fall through the cracks and then we have to deal with them on that end. So, anyway, so we've got a serious situation on the one hand where the moratorium um, has been ended and the pandemic relief is not being dispersed at any reasonable amounts or reasonable speed, and so the situation is becoming quite dire, right? So let's push on. Um, and another article, this one from Insider, is basically saying that renters have only received 11% of stimulus aid, and I think that was up to the July number. And the latest eviction ban could end before they get the rest. And in fact, that is exactly what has happened. Now, it's really quite stunning to realize that only 11% of the 46.5 billion has been dispersed because, that negates the whole point of the bill, right? The whole intention of those funds. And so we, we understand that execution is sometimes more important than the idea itself. And so a lot of renters out there are facing a dire situation. And this particular live stream is going to dig deeper into the numbers. And we're going to see exactly how large that number goes. Okay, so pressing on, it, the article also notes that um, 11% of the rental has been distributed as of July, and President Biden extended the eviction ban through July, um, and also he extended uh, for an additional 60 days to October, but there's a risk that it will be struck down by the courts, which in fact exactly what happened. This is why we're doing this live stream, right? It's really at the end of August, and the Supreme Court has already struck down the extension. So now we're faced with the situation of trying to get a grasp on how many people face, eviction from their apartments, and what does that mean for the rest of the economy? A lot of it's tied down to other factors, which we'll discuss at the end of this video. I'll kind of summarize it, and like I said, I'll do follow-up videos to kind of tease out um, the various factors in more detail, right? But to press on, so this is data that originates from the U.S. Census Bureau, but I do want to acknowledge upfront that there's a website called Mishtalk, that did the chart work on this, and sometimes I agree with him, sometimes I don't. He's not an economist, but he's a finance expert. So in this particular case, I thought, these charts are actually quite useful. So I do want to give credit where credit is due. This is from Mish Talk, but like I said, the original data source is the U.S. Census Bureau, right? And you see in this chart here, right, what is highlighted in yellow, which is basically it means this is the number of tenants who are not paying rent right now, right? And basically that means obviously they are in dire need of rental assistance, and that 11% isn't going to cut it. It's not doing the job, right? So, in terms of getting an estimate of how many people are actually at risk, this is a good starting number. I mean, the Census Bureau itself is saying, okay, we got about 8.1 million people who are not paying rent right now, and they are clearly at risk. Okay, so to move on, there may be also, in addition to the 8 million who are not paying rent, there may be other renters who are lacking in any confidence that they will be able to continue to pay rent in the future. So this is about that number, that estimate. How confident are you? This is obviously survey data. That's why it's coming from the Census Bureau. But this is asking tenants about their confidence in their ability to pay. And when you add up the no confidence and slight confidence, I don't mean to laugh. This is a very serious thing for the people who are suffering. Um, but when you say there's no confidence, there's no slight confidence, I wonder what's the real difference. But anyways, that number, if you add it up, it's easily exceeding 14 million. You know, so in terms of the numbers of people who are flat out not paying, in terms of the people who are feeling like most likely they're not going to be able to pay the rent. Maybe they're aware of something about their employment situation that's not within the scope of the survey, but that's how they're feeling. And it should be noted that when you look at this 55 or really 56 million, these are all the people who did not report. So they may, in fact, likely are additional tenants who are at risk and simply didn't bother to fill out the survey. So this is a pretty big number. We started with 8 million. Now we're easily looking at 14, 15 million, right? Um, and so another way of looking at the data about the renters and about their future ability to pay. Uh, and this is one of the reasons why I talk about this in on this video about the different headlines and different news articles. And like I said, I want to unwind that, connect the dots for you in terms of the actual economic data. And you'll see that in the news media, there are different estimates ranging from 100,000, a few hundred thousand, to millions, to 5 million, to 14 million. And so, you know, in order to understand those discrepancies, one thing to consider is that some totals are counting the individual renters as opposed to counting a household, right? So if you look at this particular table, we're looking at households that are not currently paying rent, and it's broken down by size of household, right? So obviously, um, if you are looking at individual renters, they're going to be a lot larger size. And this number right here, 8 million, this obviously is matching up to um, the 8 million that are currently not able to pay rent, or they are not paying rent right now, right? And then you have, number of households, which is about 3 million from the Census Bureau data that are not paying rent at all. And again, we need to keep in mind that there may be others, people who simply have not paid rent, should be included in this, so the numbers are actually are likely to be much higher. And then that same type of analysis broken down by households versus individuals. You know, when you add up the number of households who are not they're not feeling confident that they'll be able to continue paying the rent in the future. Again, the numbers rise substantially, right? So um, you've got the same no confidence and slight confidence as that you saw in the in the chart before. And if you're looking only at households, we're already looking at 5.4 million households who simply have no confidence that they're going to be able to pay the rent in the near future. And without the pandemic rental aid, they're clearly at risk, right? So let me go back a little bit and talk about what's going on here. Because as large as this piece is, it's still within the context of everything that else that's happening in the economy. And some concluding thoughts here are that the legislative snafu is causing a lot of pain and suffering to millions of households, right? And what does it mean if they are all thrown out? And they have to. I don't know what they're able to do. They'll all have to develop some sort of plan to survive. Possibly moving in with relatives. Getting assistance from their friends. I don't know. The pandemic relief, I think, is going to come out slowly. And so, on the very, very tippy top surface view of this, you have to understand that, maybe 14, 15 million people are going to, a million households are going to stop spending money, right? They're going to be very, very tight in terms of budget. And that's obviously a depression or a pressure to decrease aggregate demand, right? And so you're simply going to see less consumer spending, and less consumer confidence. Now that still has to play into the fact that there's also inflation going on. It's a temporary inflation, but it's still there, right? And is it possible that this will actually ease inflationary pressures? That's something to consider. Um, and the other thing is that what's happening with the economy right now is being very significantly and largely being impacted by the progress of the Delta variant of COVID-19. Right. So you've got about 14 million households, let's call it even, who are facing eviction, and they are, right now they're living within this surge of the COVID variant, which may also slow economic growth, which may also reduce job creation. And so that's going to be the next live stream that I will do tomorrow. Wednesday is my regular schedule. So we've got at least 14 million people who are at risk of losing their homes and quite possibly losing their income. Well, they've already lost their income because likely they haven't paid. So I think that's a very serious disruption to consumer spending, and in fact, it is consumer spending that has driven the economic recovery. So this is a serious risk factor to consider. And for the broadcast tomorrow, I will talk about the impact of the Delta variant, which is obviously related to this, making the situation more urgent, right? So, anyways, that's my summary thoughts. And like I said, we'll have to do multiple live streams to cover every aspect of what's going on because it's all interconnected: inflation, COVID variant, job growth, um, even the housing market. They're all interconnected in this economy. So we'll do follow live streams. But for tomorrow, I'm going to talk about how the COVID variant is impacting the economy. So, anyways, that's it for now. I hope you found this useful. And if you could, please give me a like. It does help with the algorithm and helps the channel. So, thank you for that. And I'll see